The Ensemble podcast is intended for professional financial advisors. All discussion is limited to publicly available information and should not be interpreted as legal, professional, or financial advice. Ensemble does not hold an AFS license nor provide any financial services. Before making investment decisions, you should obtain financial advice from a qualified financial advisor.
Hello, my name's James Wrigley. I'm a financial advisor and one of the principals of Melbourne-based financial planning firm First Financial. I've been a long-term listener and contributor to the Ensemble group and podcast, picking up some amazing nuggets of gold over the years. And through this podcast and the people that I'm able to speak to and interview, hopefully I can continue to deliver some of those nuggets of gold to you.
Schroders is a global asset and wealth manager with broad expertise across public and private markets, investing on behalf of individuals, institutions and advisors. We support advisors to help their clients build successful portfolios to achieve their goals, whatever they may be. We are proud to be partnering with Ensemble to host a dedicated investment space on the Ensemble platform to have more meaningful conversations with their clients and to give advisors a more efficient way to engage with Schroders. Join the Schroders investment space on the Ensemble platform today.
Hello, welcome back to another episode. Today I've got the pleasure of speaking with Nick Donnelly from Plenary Wealth. Nick, thank you for joining me.
Hey James, how you going?
Good. Thank you. Appreciate you actually reaching out. I put the post on LinkedIn to say I was starting to do this podcast, and if anyone was up for a chat, let me know, and you were one of the first ones to reach out. So thank you. That makes my job a whole lot easier if I've got someone volunteering to have a chat. So thank you for joining me.
Not a worries, good to be here.
Maybe if we just start with a bit of a chat about Plenary Wealth to begin with, kind of who you are, where you are, types of clients you deal with, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, okay. So Plenary Wealth is 10 this year, so we've been around since 2013. There's 3 advisors, so myself and the 2 guys that started the business. We have 3 support staff as well, so that's spread across paraplanning, operations, and we've got some offshore support as well. That's something we've introduced in the last few years, which is working really well. We're based in Sydney CBD, in Spring Street. We've been, our licensee is Walker Lane, which has been for 4 years. And Walker Lane was actually started by 3 firms. We have 6 firms within the licensee now, and 3 of those firms started the license. So we've grown to 6, which has been great the last few years. And, we're always on the lookout for other advisors that are keen to join the group.
Yeah, right. I'm going to organise a chat with someone else about the licensee change. But what was that, just an interesting point that you make, that change of license 4 years ago, was that a big undertaking to go from wherever you were to kind of your own license of sorts? Or was that a big undertaking?
I think definitely, my role, that was, I had been with the business for 2 years at that time, so I started as an associate. So I wasn't heavily involved in the actual transition, but, there was a lot of work involved, in transitioning across from one license to another. And I think often talking to the guys that were involved and made the decision, it was actually making the decision that was a big part of it. Getting together with like-minded advisors and having a crack at changing and doing it yourself. Yeah,
gotcha. Yep. So you've been there for 6 years then? 6 years?
So I started as an associate in mid-2017.
Yep. And what were you doing before that? Were you in and around the financial advice space?
Always been in financial services. So I studied accounting at university when I finished high school. And I've largely worked thereafter in the sort of fund accounting, fund administration space, both here and a bit of time overseas as well. And it was about 2016 when I sort of made the jump across to advice. I had a short stint at BT in their scaled advice team. So that was sort of telephone-based advice. It was mostly around sort of superannuation and insurance. It was very scaled. And then, the opportunity presented itself at Plenary Wealth in 2017. So one of the founders, Josh, I've known him personally sort of all of my life. And when the opportunity came up, I moved across and started as an associate, and then became authorised in around about 2018 or so, and been an advisor there ever since.
What was there a trigger for the change in being on the more of the funds side to the financial advice side? Was there some trigger that made you jump the fence?
Look, I have been thinking about it for a long time, and I find with a lot of things in life, it's not till you sort of start getting a little bit older and you start becoming a little more, I don't know, just aware of what works for you, what doesn't work, what you do like, what you don't like. And I feel like for most people, they finish high school, they jump straight to university, they're 18, 19 years old. Nobody really knows exactly what they want to do for the rest of their life at that age. You make a balanced decision and you try it and you see how it goes. And I think, over time, moving, I suppose, out of the back office space of some of that fund administration and fund accounting into something more client-facing was going to be something that worked in my favor because I think it suits my personality a lot. And there are a lot of people that when I was talking about making the jump, just bouncing ideas off people, a lot of people were sort of nodding their head and saying, yes, I think that's something that you'll be really good at. And
fantastic.
So it's sort of, and look, I mean, fund accounting, fund administration, accounting in general, you're generally looking back, you get towards the end of financial year and you're looking back over the last sort of, 10 to 12 months, what's taken place. Whereas, as you know, financial planning is very much about, when a client comes and meets you, it's largely day one and it's about planning for every day thereafter. That's a far more exciting prospect for me personally to sort of, someone comes across and that, you're going to be able to help these people for the next 5, 10, 20 years plus.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if it's just a financial advice thing. I speak to a lot of people in financial advice circles, but more and more, I think it seems to be really common that people, in some way, shape or form, have just kind of fell into financial advice. They tend to love it. The people that fall into it and stick around, they tend to love it. But there's lots of stories of very few people. Maybe it's a little bit more relevant now with the degrees that are pointing you in the right direction for FASEA and all the other requirements that are necessary now. But in years gone by, you did an accounting degree, you did a commerce degree, you did whatever, and then somewhere along the line after you're 18, now you're 21, you're 25, you're 30, lots of people seem to just fall into financial advice somehow. You're in a similar kind of path to that too.
Yeah, I'll totally agree. It's sort of opportunity presents itself and people have to think about it and they jump and I find largely that it's one of those industries where you've got a real concentration of people that are very passionate about it. And you don't get that in every other industry.
Yeah, true. Now, Plenary Wealth. So, can you talk us through the types of clients that you work with there? Who are your clients?
So we're different things to different people, and probably an easy way to describe our clients is the type of advice we provide and its level of complexity. So I have clients with relatively simple needs, of which most advisors in the country can help. Typical advice, optimizing their super, some personal insurance, might need some help controlling their cash flow or budgeting, medium to long-term financial projections, and potentially assisting with property transactions, so home or investment property. Clients with more, intermediate levels of complexity, so basic SMSF structures, so fund viability, establishing the SMSF, implementation of the investment program and ongoing SMSF management, basic estate planning, so your simple wills, etc., and more complex insurance, so key man, buy, sell, or insurance for the self-employed. And then on the more complex or involved side, SMSF advice around limited recourse borrowing arrangements and execution, structure changes, complex investment programs, and broad ongoing SMSF management. We work with a lot of trusts, so family trusts, special disability trusts. Again, just understand the viability, establishing the trust, implementation of complex investment structures, and ongoing trust management. We're doing quite a bit of work with deceased estate management, so helping trustees carry out their duties in difficult scenarios. So they may have beneficiaries with drug or alcohol dependence, victims of abuse, those with severe disability. So again, viability of the trust, establishing the trust, implementation of the investment program, and ongoing management just to make sure that they continue to meet trustee obligations. And complex estate planning, so building in testamentary trusts to wills, power of attorney, and guardianships. The type of individuals, so PAYG employees, business owners, we have overseas or dual citizens, we've got clients in the US, UK, Singapore, Thailand, Japan. We're getting more and more tech employees as well, your Amazon, Google, LinkedIn, and specifically around the employee share schemes. But my specialty in the business is elder law, so that elder advice. So it really encompasses aged care, home care, retirement villages, granny flat arrangements, and everything settling. And look, they're a great client because we often talk about the scale of clients who want advice and clients who need advice. They definitely fall into the spectrum of needing advice. And the broad issues that are helpful with the aged care costs, funding options, social security implications, and estate planning consideration.
So those older clients, if they're 75 plus, like how are they coming to you in the first place? Are they the mum or dad of the 45-year-old that you're working with, or are they just finding you through some other means? How does the 75-year-old end up sitting in front of you in your office?
Well, I think it comes down largely to how they're referred to you. So look, in most cases, your referrals for aged care for those types of people, a lot of the time, interestingly, it actually comes from other financial advisors. So, and the reason is that, a lot of advisors don't really seem to like working on aged care. I'm not exactly sure why, but in some ways, I suppose I do understand, it is specialised, it's complex, it's very involved. So a lot of advisors, as you're probably aware, don't sort of, aren't able or aren't willing to help clients with aged care. So to give you an example, there's 10 advisors at Walker Lane, of which I'm the only one that specialises in aged care.
Yeah, right.
So, I might get an email or a call from another advisor, and this might be a long-standing client. They might be a couple, and one of them needs to move into aged care, and they're looking for their options there. And that's where that referral will come from. So that's the example of how they'll come across to me.
And so that type of client where they're a long-standing client of some other advisor, you're being brought in to do, you're kind of just doing a one-off job of sorts, however you might describe it, but you're doing a one-off job for this client that's a long-standing client of some other advisor. You're wheeled in to deal with the aged care piece.
Yep.
And then the relationship stays with that previous advisor. Would that be right?
Yeah, in that case, that's correct.
Yeah.
The relationship outside of that piece of advice continues on the same trajectory, but we do, I suppose what I always say to clients is no matter who it's referred to, no decisions are made in isolation. So if it's a referral from another advisor, their current situation and what they're doing and how they're working with that client also becomes a big part of that. At the end of the process, from my side, typically the relationship just continues with that, with the existing advisor. But look, I really like those types of referrals because, for several reasons, the handover is really warm. The client is used to the advice process, and
Sure.
they're the client that sees value in advice because otherwise they wouldn't have an existing advisor, nor would they be comfortable to be referred to another advisor.
Gotcha. So you were talking before we started recording about it's not just aged care, and there's a few different elements of this kind of elder advice, aged care type advice that you're providing. Maybe we can tackle each of those and talk through what you're doing in the space, maybe what your process looks like. So if we just start with the aged care piece. So that's someone needing to go into an aged care home. You're talking about where that introduction might come from, but take it from there. You've someone sitting in front of you. What are you doing? What's your process? How's that coming together?
Yeah, and I think just the first term aged care, it's that's normally that's the term that most people use, aged care advice. But as I said before, I think of it far more as elder advice because there are several more elements and several more areas of advice that we help clients with. But tackling the permanent aged care. So we might get a referral from another advisor or from another referral source, and really common situations. You might have a husband and a wife, and one of the partners is requiring permanent aged care. So you sit down and quite often, the interesting part about this is that people don't always know that we actually exist. I've had other clients or other friends that have said to me, look, I wish I knew someone like you exist because I've been through this process. It's really, really tough. And people don't know that this is a specialised area. So, yeah, we typically sit down with, a short introduction phone call just to get an idea of the type of help that they're looking for, making sure I'm the right person that can help them. And then we'll have a more extensive sort of scope session where we really sit down. You're not solving problems. You're really trying to understand because, understanding and empathy is a huge part of this type of advice because people are going through a really, really big change. So it'd be a case of sitting down, understanding where they are at in the aging process as well. You could have someone that is already in aged care in what's called respite, which is called sort of like a temporary visit to an aged care facility, where it might be someone that is expecting to need aged care, but it's kind of like a try before you buy sort of scenario. So you might have someone that's already in there and they're trying to understand, what it's going to cost, the implications for their assets. I'm going to lose my pension, keep the pension, do I have to sell my house? So that's a pretty common scenario. Someone comes, they're in care, all ready to move into. And then it's a case of just understand where they are, what they want, and get a handle on just the ways that you're going to be able to help them.
And in terms of the advice that you deliver to them, is it a scoped, in this case where it's residential aged care, is it a scoped piece of advice dealing with residential aged care? Are you using anything like the aged care steps calculators, advice generators? Like how are you actually generating that advice, delivering that advice? What tools are you using?
Yeah, most definitely. So once someone comes to you and they are ready to move to aged care, it's very much about, one of the first questions people always have is, how much is it going to cost and what's the best way to pay for it? So, there's a vast amount of information out there that can help, particularly with a lot of the product providers. A lot of the product providers provide fantastic software and calculators that can give you an idea of exactly what things are going to look like. How much is it going to cost each and every year? What will my pension change by? So the impact on the cash flow. And the strategy comes from that. If we do option A, this is what it's going to cost, because every decision that they make, particularly financially, is largely going to have an impact on their Centrelink entitlements, which is, when I say Centrelink entitlements, I'm talking about their age pension, but I'm also then talking about the actual fees and charges that the aged care facility is going to charge, which is guided by Centrelink. So yes, it's using the software available for you really to project out and place a picture in front of the client to say, this is exactly what it's going to look like if we choose this part.
Yep. And so once you've delivered that advice, you've come up with the optimal way that you believe to restructure their assets or pay for things.
Yeah.
What's your involvement then off the back of that? If they're selling houses or whatever, how hands-on are you with the back end of that advice piece?
Yeah, well, very, very much involved all the way through the entire process. And one of the things about aged care advice is it's highly emotive. When people come to you, they haven't just woken up in the morning and thought, I think I might get some aged care advice. This is something that's been probably rattling around in their heads for several months or several years. And when someone comes across and they sit down and you say to them, look, you'll go through this once or twice in your life. I'm doing this every day of the week. You see, the shoulders relax, the tension largely disappears because they feel like I found someone. So I found someone that can help me with that strategy, but is going to, essentially handhold me through that whole process. If the client is selling a home, so I act as their representative through the full process. So that might mean communicating with a real estate agent, a conveyancer, and any other professionals that are involved in the process from listing the property all the way through to settlement. And then I'll also interact with both the aged care facility and also with Centrelink. So the aged care facility, just managing the communication so the client's not stuck in the middle. So I might be saying, client A will be moving into your facility. We're going to pay a RAD of X amount and the daily payment for the remainder. We're expecting the asset to sell in 3 months. The money will be transferred to you. And, my role is just to keep the client informed. I will need their help along their way with transfers and signing forms and so forth. But really, my role is to execute everything and communicate between, everyone. And then that does extend to Centrelink as well. So we'll become what's called a Centrelink nominee for our clients, which essentially means we can communicate with Centrelink, so we can ask questions, we can provide updates. And Centrelink can sometimes be a big battle, particularly if a lot of client has already had exposure to it, which they normally have because they're partway through the process. They have a little bit of fear about it, which I understand. So it's just a case of not really updating Centrelink, but the big part with Centrelink is making sure that they do what they say they're going to do. you can't take anything for granted with Centrelink. It's our job as advisors to make sure that they understand what we're communicating to them and that they put it in place. And that's just something you learn over time. So that's our role during the process, and really our role ends once we're comfortable. Asset restructures have been amended if they need to, property buys and sells, the fees that the client are being charged are correct. Their Centrelink entitlements have been amended correctly. Estate planning also comes into it as well, and the interaction between paying a RAD to an aged care facility, what that looks like when the resident eventually passes away. And look, our role really ends at that point when we've implemented all steps in the advice.
Gotcha. So that's the residential aged care part, but other areas of elder advice that you're providing, maybe the first step before that with the home care packages. What does that look like? Because we've, at First Financial, we do a little bit of aged care advice as well, but in terms of being, I'm really keen to pick your brain on it, in terms of feeling like we're being valuable in the in the home care package space. I think we're still, the jury's out on that.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that? What are you doing in the home care packages?
Yeah, home care probably, it represents a relatively small portion of the advice we provide. What we often find is a client might already be receiving home care when they come to us, because they might have a view saying, mum or dad or spouse may be moving into permanent care. At the moment, we're getting home care under package, at 1, 2, 3 or 4. So however, if a client comes to us and they come to us with the intention saying, look, I would like to get some home care, what am I entitled to, and can you help me obtain it? The answer is yes. So again, it comes back to, I suppose home care would be slightly less involved in the sense that it generally doesn't require as big a decisions around your asset restructuring. The big decision of buying, selling the home won't normally come into it. It's more about, everyone is aware of the massive wait times for home care via Centrelink. So it's about, again, becoming the Centrelink nominee, making sure that we're communicating with Centrelink, they've got all the information that they need, so we don't get to the front of the queue and they say this box hasn't been ticked and we've got to start again. Once we get to that point where we've been, granted home care under a particular package, we also have other partners that we refer to, home care providers, because the client typically has to choose that themselves. So we've got a sort of trusted network there of people that can help. Again, just making sure they get the care that they're going to be paying for, because it is a space that is a little bit grey, I would potentially describe it. Like any profession, there's some home care providers that are a lot better than others.
True. Yeah.
So that's typically our role with home care.
Yep. And other areas of elder advice? You mentioned before we started recording there was granny flats. I haven't done any advice around granny flats. Like I know kind of roughly what they're talking about, but the ins and outs of it, I've got no idea. Hey, what are you doing in that space?
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting space, and I think it's an area that will continue to become more and more popular. With the cost of property just increasing exponentially, particularly along the eastern seaboard. So the term granny flat can be confusing, as people immediately think the elder must live in a small structure in the backyard, which is not the case. So the easier way to describe it is multi-generational living. So it may be a separate structure like a granny flat, but it can often be within a home with dedicated spaces, for living, bedroom, bathroom, etc. For the elder, just to ensure that, importantly, they keep their independence. So essentially, I guess to go back a step, so a granny flat arrangement, or it used to be called sort of life interests. So essentially, you have two parties. In most cases, it will be an elder with an adult son or daughter. So think of it as an exchange. So the elder will provide financial support to the son or daughter typically. Now, that could be in the form of cash, that could be in the form of a property, or a combination of both. So it works in the sense that the elder person, think of it, often it could be thought of as an early inheritance, and it's a great tool for that. So they might buy a property for son or daughter. Fantastic. In exchange for that, the son or daughter agrees to provide care for that elder for the rest of their lives. So there's two parties to it. Now, what's really important to remember with granny flat arrangements is your client is always the elder, because they're the most vulnerable and they're the one that has the most to lose. So never forget who your client is a big part of granny flat arrangements. It's something that I've learned. So you have a scenario where mum and dad move in with son or daughter, and they agree to take care of them for the rest of their life. Now, this is a legally binding agreement. So we consult with a lawyer to draft these agreements after meeting with our clients and understanding that they're all very comfortable to move forward, because there is a financial side of it, but there's also the non-financial side. It's one thing to say, yes, I'm happy to receive these assets. I'm more than happy to take care of mum for the rest of her life. But the dynamics of relationships can change over time. And moving in with an elder parent is a far different proposition in reality versus theory. And I think often people can be clouded by the reality of now getting themselves on the property ladder. And then when the reality hits of looking after mum or dad for the rest of their lives, the last thing that we ever want is a relationship to be strained because of that. But our role as advisors, in almost every advice is to, hope for the best, but also plan for the worst. We need to help people picture what this is going to look like, because when things go south, memories can be short. Typically, with the type of arrangement, beyond just the exchange of assets and so forth, there's a change in Centrelink entitlements as well, because there's, typically if you're earning the full pension, you can't just give away if you're earning no pension or part pension, you can't typically just give all your assets away to receive the full pension.
Yep.
The gifting provision. So granny flat arrangements allow kind of an exemption for those assets that they're giving away, that the client typically largely, if it's done correctly, won't be negatively impacted from a social security point of view.
Is there some type of limit to how much you can give away, or a calculation that happens? Like what?
Yep.
What does that look like?
There's a formula, a relatively complex formula that is based on age. So as you get older, the number changes.
Gotcha.
So it is scaled, and it depends on the client's age, but it also depends on the type of asset that is being transferred as well. So once you've made that decision, once you've got an understanding of what they're looking for, what they're actually picturing the outcome to be, that's when you start working with Centrelink and say, okay, well, if you give away X amount, that amount won't count towards your asset test for your full age pension. So
Gotcha.
Again, it's just another example of not looking at anything in isolation. If there's no point someone giving away all of their assets if they're just going to lose the pension and have no cash flow to live on. So it's you've got not competing interests, but you need to think of both sides of the equation, but also just be conscious that the elder is the one away that's largely giving away the bulk of their assets. So they are the one that's more vulnerable. They're the one with more to lose, and they are the client. It's important never to forget that.
Yeah. You talk about relationships and the reality of living with mum or dad may be different to what it sounds like before it happens. Any horror stories of things going south, or it's been
Many.
Smooth sailing mostly?
But to give you some background, up until 2 years ago, granny flat arrangements existed, but no legal contract was required. Centrelink accepted a granny flat arrangement was in place, but the elder had virtually zero protection, because son or daughter takes the money, they move in together, son or daughter gets a new partner, doesn't like mum or dad. Mum or dad's given away all of their assets to the kid, and then mum and dad's out on the street, they've lost all of their assets. And that might sound extreme, but that is 100% what typically happens. And it's just one example of what we call elder abuse. That's a really tragic outcome, and it wasn't that uncommon, as hard as that is to believe. Now, what changed 2 years ago was legal contracts were required, a legally binding agreement was required, and it was part of the changes to CGT legislation, because if there could have been CGT implications for the person giving away their property, because he's technically selling the property. So to ensure that people were exempt from CGT, the legally binding agreement is now required, which is great from a CGT exemption point of view, but more importantly, you won't have those situations where mum or dad could be out on their ear with absolutely nothing.
Gotcha.
So it's a complex area, but I truly see that multi-generational living, I see that being a big part of the future, because, people growing up now, the challenges of buying a house for someone that is 20 years old, as opposed to, when I was a lot younger, it is incredibly difficult, and this is a fantastic way for that to happen. But it's just got to be, you just got to tread with caution.
Yeah, really, a really interesting space to be involved in, actually, now that you explained it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other major areas of elder advice that you're doing? Is there anything else there?
We do retirement villages as well.
Oh, yeah, retirement village. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, that's probably retirement villages, and I guess the commonality between permanent aged care and retirement villages is that there's a big, requirement. There's a capital requirement to go into a retirement village, and generally there might be a decision that needs to be made around asset restructure. The family home is typically how people fund their entry into a retirement village.
Yep.
So again, it's a case of, I've got some clients at the moment, they've had a couple of health issues over the last sort of 12 months. Definitely no need for permanent aged care, but a retirement village is definitely going to give them far more security. People don't move into retirement villages to make money. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
You go to a retirement village, they're run by typically large operators, and when you leave, you typically pay what's called a departure fee, refurbishment fee, whatever you want to call it. And that's a big part of it, because moving into a retirement village is fantastic for people. There's amenities, there's like-minded people, there's care close by. Often they are quite close to an aged care facility, or they're connected to it in the event that a resident might need permanent care in the future. So it's the perfect outcome for a lot of people. But you might be selling your home, and you ultimately often transfer that exact amount to the retirement village, and you broadly don't share in the capital gains of that retirement village. So you're moving it from an asset that ideally would be typically growing in value, and you're moving it across to an asset that you don't share in the capital gains. Plus, when you leave, you generally pay a departure fee too that can be up to 35%.
Yeah, it's huge.
But, we say to clients, look, you've got to think about the non-financial. If that's going to give you the security, knowing that health is close by, ground floor, lots of accessibility and lots of like-minded people around you, that's a great outcome. Sometimes the kids aren't as happy because it does affect the ultimate estate. And that's a big question we ask clients. We say, for so many elders, one of the real common themes I find with elder advice is the clients are more worried about their kids than themselves. I don't want to pick a too nicer aged care facility because I don't want my fees to be too high, because it will leave less for the children.
It's interesting, isn't it, when the clients get to that stage? There's the younger retired age, it's more about we're spending money, having a good time, travelling, and then as they get to that 75, 80, it's a bit of a mortality thing, worried about how much are they leaving behind, making a decision around how much they might leave behind. Yeah,
look, that's exactly right. They become concerned about that, and, again, it comes back to, never forgetting who your client is. We want their mind to be expanded to say, look, well, I'm certainly not discounting that in any way, shape or form, but you do need to think about yourself as well, and sort of striking that balance. And typically you land somewhere in the middle. So yeah, it's a very common theme, I suppose.
So we've got residential aged care, there's the home care packages, granny flat arrangements, retirement villages. Anything else? Is there a fifth one?
No, that's
pretty much it.
And I'd say probably 2/3 of that would probably be permanent aged care, but I'm sort of a bigger piece of the pie is definitely granny flat arrangements and retirement villages. So I think that's going to be the case. Sort of going into the future. And look, we touched before on that sort of one-off piece of advice for our clients, and it typically it does. But in some cases, clients if a client comes from, say, an accountant or a lawyer or from an aged care facility themselves, they may not have an advisor in place. And once that sort of implementation is complete, I've often had clients that do stay on as ongoing clients.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining me, Nick. Where can people find you? If there's any advisors listening that, as you said, there's not that many that are doing aged care or elder advice, and they need your help, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Probably LinkedIn is probably the easiest way, but all my details are also available on the Plenary Wealth website as well.
Perfect, and we'll put some links and things in the show notes for anyone that's watching or listening along. There'll be some comments in wherever you're listening to this. You might be able to click through. So thanks again, Nick. Appreciate you joining me, and thanks for being here.
No, it was great to be here. Thanks so much.
This material does not contain and should not be relied on for financial, accounting, legal or tax advice. Schroders does not give any warranty as to the accuracy, reliability or completeness of information presented. Visit www.schroders.com.au/advisors for more information about our funds.